please tell me I am not the only one that this has ever happened to. You get a plan, probably a workout plan, but maybe a food plan, and it's a good one. You've thought a lot about it. You have maybe put things on your calendar. Maybe you have laid out your workout. Maybe you've gone to the grocery store. I mean, whatever you need to do to get your plan going. And then life showed up and the plan was gone. Has that happened to you? I hope so, because it's definitely happened to me. If you listen to my 500th episode, you know that my dad passed away recently. And if I'm honest, that has rocked my world in so many ways. I have had a very hard time getting my legs under me over the past 2 months. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. And that's kind of like a bigger event, a longer one. But we also make other plans. And sometimes they're just plans of this is what my schedule is going to be. And then something happens, like what happened to one of my dear, dear friends. And that is she went skiing with her family. She was on her last run of the last day, started to fall, tried to catch herself, and hurt her knee. Like ACL, MCL, the whole thing. That's more of an acute one. Mine is a little bit longer, but regardless, both of those are kind of a plan gone bad. Today, we're talking about what to do when that plan falls apart and why having a backup plan isn't giving up. It might actually be the best thing that you can do for yourself to move forward. Life can hit us in a lot of different ways. Some of this might just be like an injury, like my friend. Sometimes we get sick. Sometimes people we love get sick and we need to care for them. Maybe it is something like what I've been going through, which is just that grief or emotional weight. There just seems to be so much heaviness in the world right now, and especially when hard things happen to those we love, that can affect us so deeply. Maybe you're dealing with a lot of travel, either personally or professionally. Maybe you just have schedule chaos. This episode is hitting at the beginning of April, which is when the school year starts to wind down, which is really like a winding up. If you think about it, if you have school-age children or grandchildren, May is bonkers. Everybody knows that. And maybe it's just a season that got away from you. Maybe also it's a mental health issue. Maybe things are going along fine in our head, and then we just kind of reach that tipping point for whatever that's reason. And I don't want to negate the heaviness and the hardness of that either. All of these things are life. They're not excuses. They're not like, well, this happened and this happened and this happened, and so I can't do this and this didn't work out. It's just life. Life happens, and it happens to all of us, including yours truly, for sure. The question isn't whether life will interrupt your plan. It's what you will do when it does. And that's what I want to talk about today. Because what can happen is we tend to have an all or nothing mentality, right? So we're going to say like, I am doing everything exactly like I thought it was. And then if it doesn't go well, then we're going to stop. And then we feel badly about stopping. And then we continue stopping because we don't want to have to go back, and it's going to be too hard to go back. And then restarting feels even harder than it did before. This is the cycle that I want to talk about breaking today. Consistency in taking care of yourself, whether that is nutritionally or from a physicality standpoint with your exercise, or maybe that's doing mindfulness work like meditating or journaling. But consistency is not about never missing, okay? We're going to miss things. It's about never fully stopping. And there is a very big difference in that, because what we want to do is we want to claim ourselves as someone who moves, someone who eats nutritionally dense foods, who fuels us well, someone who cares for our mental health by also eating and exercising, but journaling, meditating, etc. We want to stay connected to that identity as a person. And I know for all of you Jesus followers, you're like, but my identity is in Jesus. And yes, that, obviously that. And I'm talking it a layer down. So give me a little bit of grace with that. But just on a day-to-day basis, yes, our identity is in Christ, but it's also as a Christ follower who cares for the temple that God gave us. And that will look different often. If you listened to my episode with Carrie Ann Madden a couple of weeks ago, we talked about this, and she's a fellow trainer. She's a master trainer, so like a level above me. And she shared how caretaking for her mom has turned into a season where she misses a lot of workouts, and she is okay with that because she knows her trend is that she moves, and she is staying connected to this identity as, okay, well, I am someone who moves, even if it looks a little differently. I have mentioned this concept before on a few episodes, and I have not ever taken it and crafted it into a full episode. That's what I'm doing today. This concept, I can't remember where it came from. I wish I could tell you like when it first came out, but I wanted to challenge the group I was talking to think of what happens when life happens and we can't do the thing that we wanted to do. So I came up with this phrase called alternative minimum yes. When life happens, what is your alternative minimum yes? And at the risk of sounding self-serving, and I really hope it's not, I want you to receive this with love, with humility. The acronym for that is AMY. Amy, my name, because I want you to think, I want you to get me in your ear, like a loving, kind way. I want you to get me in your ear and be like, what would Amy tell me to do? The alternative minimum yes is the smallest, most doable version of movement or nutrition or care that keeps you connected to yourself when your original plan isn't possible. So I want to unpack this a little bit. Alternative means it's different. When I am coaching clients and they are unable to do something, say a squat, because their knees are cranky, then we choose something different for them. It's not lesser, it is a different way of moving so that we can strengthen their muscles, but we're not hurting their knees. That's an alternate movement. So alternative means it is different, but it's not worse, it's not lesser, it's just different. Minimum is kind of going for what's the easiest win. What is the smallest thing that I can do to go, okay, all right, check, I did that. I feel better. I have cared for myself. So what's the easiest win is your minimum. And then the yes means you're still saying yes to yourself. It's just in a different way. It's that alternative way that you are saying yes to. So yes, that acronym is Amy. And I want you thinking, what would Amy have me do? And what's fun is sometimes I hear from you, and sometimes you will respond to emails or you'll reach out to me in other ways, and you're like, well, I was dealing with this issue, and then I thought, well, what would Amy want me to do? And so I did this. And those are the big, those things, when you all share those with me, I can't even tell you how much it means to me, because it means that it's not just me and the mic and talking into a screen. It means that things are resonating and we're starting to shift how we think about caring for ourselves and away from the diet culture, away from the stringency, and into honoring our body and our season. And I also want to add this. Sometimes our alternative minimum yes, our Amy, is rest. That's okay. Can you or do you need to say yes to rest? That counts. I want you to hear me loud and clear. This AMY is not some kind of a sneaky way to say you still have to do something, sweat every day, keep going. It's not saying do walking lunges from your bed to go brush your teeth because that way you can get some movement in. It's a way to stay in relationship with your body instead of abandoning it and not paying attention to it. We are all coming in to this space and to this conversation with a lot of different foundations and rhythms of what we do. I know some of you swim a lot, some of you walk a lot, some of you lift really heavy weights. And so it's very difficult for me to give some examples, but let's just kind of think about different ways that we can have an alternative minimum yes. And I'm going to take this more from the movement perspective because that is the air that I breathe. But you can kind of start thinking about that, because if you start thinking about it, hold on to that, because I've got a challenge for you here in a second. But maybe you're like my friend and you hurt your lower body, you hurt your knees, you're not able to walk, you're not able to go to the gym and do your workouts with your favorite group of fitness-minded people. So what can you do instead? Well, maybe you just do upper body work. Maybe you focus on some of those smaller muscles around your glutes, the hip musculature, and those gluteus medius, those gluteus minimus, something to strengthen the joints that are affected. Again, if that's your knee, that's an example, but any kind of lower body. Maybe you hurt your upper body. I have been dealing with a shoulder issue that, if I'm honest, has been going on for way too long because I have not been great at doing my exercise therapy movements because I have had such a crazy year, which that really is just telling on myself, because what I did was I shifted my minimum yes to more lower body stuff and more walking, which is a wonderful thing to do if you have hurt your upper body. But I do recommend that you do your exercise therapy, like do that kind of stuff, because I've just now gotten back into it and I'm like, I didn't wake up with a hurt shoulder last night. It was awesome. Anyway, upper body, then maybe shift to your lower body. Maybe if you hurt a really big muscle, then it's time to go see a physical therapist, see an exercise therapist. Depending on what state you're in, you may or may not need a doctor's prescription for that. I live in Texas. I know a lot of you live in Texas, and you actually do not need a doctor's prescription to go to a physical therapist. I think you have 10 days. It might be 3 weeks. I'm not really sure, but still you can go. And if you follow directions well, like I normally do, but I have not been, you can take those movements that they give you, and they'll probably give you a printout or email you something, and you can go do them at home. So that's an option too with the physical therapy, exercise therapy, etc. You can also do mobility stuff. You can do gentle stretching. Obviously, if you are hurt, make sure you have doctor's clearance for this before you do anything. It is very important to me that we do not hurt your body more by trying to help it. So be aware of what needs help, of what needs assistance, and get your doctor's clearance before you do any of that. It may be that you don't have an injury, you don't have like a body part that's not cooperating, you just have a life situation that you're walking through that is normal, but does not mean it's any less difficult. As I am recording this, it is the very beginning of April when I'm recording this, and I have not done this, but I think I have been traveling more in 2026 than I have been at home. And that's all due to family stuff. I helped my mom when she was recovering from her knee surgery. 11 days after I got home from helping her with those initial few days, my dad passed away. And then it's been back and forth for several weeks now. And I'm not complaining about that. There's nowhere I would rather be right now than with my mom to support her in this very challenging season for her. But what it also means is that my rhythm is off. And especially in the first few weeks of just deep grief and shock, because it was such a surprise that my dad passed, my alternative minimum yes was this. I got outside. I tried to get some fresh air a few minutes a day. And if I could, I took a gentle walk. I know I shared this on my 500th episode, but one of my dear friends drove in about an hour and a half and took me for a gentle walk. Like we were in our street shoes, just moving around. So this was not exercise at all, but it was a yes to getting some fresh air. It was a yes to getting some sunshine. It was a yes to connection with my friend and just having the space to laugh and cry and all of that. My friend who hurt herself skiing scheduled extra time with her personal trainer and then with a physical therapist to help strengthen those supporting muscles, kind of like what we were talking about earlier. She would get on the bike because she could do the bike. She's been rehabbing her knee back to being able to do most of what she can do and what she loves to do until she has surgery later this year. And sometimes our alternative minimum yes is just taking whatever we were going to do and pull it down. If you normally go for a 30-minute walk, maybe it's a 5-minute walk down a few houses or down around the block. Maybe all you can say yes to is a few minutes. And I want to point you back to my episode in December on the fitness snack you need. And that was all on like this concept of exercise snacking. If you didn't listen to the episode, basically, it was the fact that research is showing us that 10 minutes has very real, very documented benefits. Short movement can absolutely count, and it can be beneficial to your body and your brain. And this is what we are caring about. We care about our whole body, not just the physicality of it, but also our soul, our brain, our head, our emotions. Like all of that is what we are caring for. We're not just caring for our muscles and our heart. Yes, of course, that's important. But what I am encouraging you to do is consider the entirety of how God made you, body, soul, and mind. The problem with figuring out your alternative minimum yes is the moment that you're in the moment, you're tired, you're overwhelmed, maybe you're hurting physically, maybe you're hurting emotionally or mentally. That's the worst time. I shouldn't say the worst, but it's like, that's a tough time to make it a good decision because we're also probably having some pretty serious decision fatigue or just regular fatigue in general. If you wait until the crisis to figure out your backup plan, then the backup plan is usually nothing. So what I encourage you to do, just for a second, is I want you to think through, while things hopefully are stable, what can be your alternative minimum yes? What would Amy tell you to do? And you have no idea how self-focused I feel when I say that, and I'm so sorry, but it'll stick with you. I know it'll stick with you. So a few questions to ask yourself ahead of time. Number one is, if I couldn't do my normal workout this week or do my normal meal plan or something like that, what's one thing I could do instead that would still feel like caring for myself? Maybe that's walking. Maybe that is going for a bike ride. Maybe that is foam rolling and taking care of your connective tissue. Maybe that is meditating or doing some mindful breathing. If you had no time, no energy, what's the shortest version of movement that would still feel like a yes? So maybe today you got up and you did 40 minutes of moving heavy things. And yesterday you got up and you went for a 30-minute walk. And so you're kind of in this rhythm of 30 or 40 minutes. What's the shortest version of that would still feel like a yes? That would still feel like, okay, cool, I did something. For me, that's about 10 minutes. But that's just me. Maybe for you, it's going to be 3 minutes. Maybe for you, it's more like 20 minutes. I would encourage you not to have it too long, because in those times of crisis, in that time of challenge, that 20 minutes may still be too long or feel too much. So again, we're going shortest. Can you go even less? Can you commit to even less? And then when you get to the point that you think, okay, if it's any less, then why bother? Then that's probably where you stop. And what I want you to do is I want you to frame it as being wise in your body and being wise for the consistency that you are offering yourself. And I really want to remind you that your alternative minimum yes, of course, can be physical, but it also can be mental. It can be emotional. It can be spiritual. Maybe instead of doing what you normally do and you're just not able to, maybe you just sit down and read the Bible. Or maybe you spend a little extra time praying. Maybe you get outside and have that be still time. We've talked a lot about that on this show, and that is basically being with God, being still, knowing that God is God. And maybe you don't even come to Him with a bunch of praises and prayers, but you just come to Him with your presence and being in His presence as well. Maybe that is your best yes today. The intensity of your alternative minimum yes does not need to match the intensity you normally bring. This does not mean if you typically go to a 45-minute HIIT class that you have to figure out how long you can do the HIIT. The intensity does not need to match. What needs to match is your consistency and that you will receive a benefit in some way. And you can trade benefits. Maybe it's not a physical benefit, but it's an emotional or a spiritual benefit. Because as you care for your body, even if it is what you might consider imperfect, you are still honoring the God who created it. If you have been in one of those seasons or had one of those situations where life showed up like it does on a random Thursday sometimes, and you're thinking, oh gosh, this is just messing me up with what my plans were, then I invite you to identify what that alternative minimum yes is. And I know that it can be hard to know ahead of time what that's going to be, but what would happen if you said, no matter what, I am going to get outside and get some fresh air for 5 minutes a day, no matter what happens in my life. Or I am going to walk for 5 minutes. Or I am going to, okay, what came to mind? That's what I want you to text me. So if you are watching this on YouTube, I want you to type in the comments what your alternative minimum yes is. And if you are listening to the podcast, then go to the episode description, and right at the top, it's the very first thing that it says. It says, click to text thoughts on today's episode. And that will text me. It's no commitment. You're not getting any emails. It just goes into the abyss, but it comes to me. And I want to hear what your alternative minimum yes is. These are so important to identify, because when life hits you, then you'll know what's important to keep doing. Decide now, while things are moving along relatively smoothly. Write it down in YouTube, put it in the comments, text me, because life will ask you eventually, and you'll want to have an answer ready. You don't have to do everything. You just have to keep saying yes, even when the yes looks different or alternative to what you planned. Okay, that is all for today. Go out there and have a graced day.